Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'll be reviewing for you Hogwarts Legacy for the Switch 2. I already have a review of the original Hogwarts Legacy on Switch 1, so if you'd like to hear my thoughts on that game first, there will be a link to that video in my end screen. But for now, this review is going to be talking about the changes made to the Switch 2 version, and if I think you should pick it up again if you already have the Switch 1 version, or if you haven't picked up the Switch 1 version because you've heard about how poorly it runs, should you pick up this version instead? So first off, let's get the obvious out of the way. Hogwarts Legacy on Switch 1 was one of the most gorgeous looking games on that system. It did a wonderful job of capturing the feel of Hogwarts, and even the world outside of Hogwarts was so beautifully realized. But at the same time, you could tell that it was made for much more powerful hardware, and why it took so darn long to come to the Switch compared to other platforms, because the game is just so darn demanding. Even just going through doors would sometimes have buffering symbols on them, and going in and out of Hogsmeade was a nightmare. Thankfully, on the Switch 2, a lot of these problems are significantly reduced, if not completely removed. The game still has the same general art direction, but now it looks so much better. The creators have confirmed that this is not a port of the Switch 1 version, but they use, quote, next generation assets. I'm not sure if they mean they borrowed it from the more powerful versions of the game, or they made new assets. I'm inclined to think it was the former, because this still feels like the same game from 2023, just better looking and better performing, but there's no denying that it took an already great looking game and made it look practically perfect. I absolutely loved looking at these environments, especially when there were grass, and there was water effects, and when the sun was shining off the water. Pretty much every moment of this game looked absolutely gorgeous, and by far the best looking iteration of Harry Potter's world that I have ever seen, even better than the movies. Although that's not saying much if you saw the ugly brown color palette of the Half-Blood Prince movie. But perhaps the most notorious of all was that the Switch 1 version also was plagued with very lengthy loading screens. There are still loading screens in this version, but they're mainly reserved for when you go in and out of Hogwarts and when you fast travel. But the Switch 1 version was notorious for having loading screens in one major area that the other versions didn't, and that was going in and out of Hogsmeade and going in and out of shops. Thankfully, the Switch 2 version allows you to go in and out of Hogsmeade and in and out of the shops without a loading screen. There are still the buffering symbols on the doors, but at least you don't have to sit your way through those boring tips again. Just to show you how far along the Switch 2 version has come, here's a side-by-side comparison, both of which captured by yours truly in case someone asks in the comments. And here you can see for yourself just how much quicker you can get into that iconic village. Now, whether or not the game runs better in terms of frame rate, I don't think I could tell you. It seemed like it ran the same. I imagine it's probably slightly less choppy. I still noticed some pop-in when I was flying on the broom, and I did notice that some of my muscle memory from the original didn't quite translate over. It could have just been that it's been a long time since I played the game, and I'm out of practice. But I just felt like when I first played Hogwarts Legacy, broom flying was this exhilarating thrill ride, and I remember thinking, man, That's why Harry chose that as one of his memories to fight against the Patronus, but in the Switch 2 version, it felt like I was kind of flying all over the place. Same thing with the combat, that took some getting used to, but once I got into the groove, I really got into the groove. So I'm glad that it only took a little bit. Since this is the Switch 2 version, it also includes mouse mode controls. You can actually play the entire game in mouse mode. Now, whether or not you can play left-handed, I don't know, because I'm a righty and I don't remember seeing that option. And from what I know about game development, especially if you've played Twilight Princess, reprogramming a character who uses a wand in the right hand to use it in the left hand without redoing all the cutscenes is a very hard task. So I'm really sorry to you lefties if that isn't an option. However, you can seamlessly switch between mouse mode and regular controls anytime you want. There are motion controls. I'm not sure if those are in the original Switch 1 version or not. I tried using them without the mouse mode. They were terrible. But I am very pleased to report that mouse mode works really well in selecting options. Like, the menu was driven by moving a cursor as though the game was made for PC first, and it was kind of slow and clunky. So I'm pleased to report that using mouse mode allows the menus to move much, much quicker, especially when you're choosing what you want to say in a conversation and choosing what side quests you want to follow, and picking spots on the map to fast travel. So much more convenient in mouse mode. It was a bit weird trying to do stuff like moving the camera and aiming spells with the mouse mode. It worked a few times when I tested it in low pressure areas, but I really can't see myself doing the major fights of the game with this control scheme. Still, I am glad that the Switch 2 allows for such a seamless transition between the two whenever you want, so you can mix and match to your heart's content with very little problems. Now, I say very little because this version is not without its unfortunate glitches. By the time I got to Hogsmeade, I won't say what point, but after a significant event took place in Hogsmeade, that's when I started noticing this game having a major problem. So major, in fact, that that's why this review came out so late, is that I almost gave up on playing this. I rented the Switch 2 version from Gamefly, which, for those of you that are wondering, yes, it's a keycard release. I'm not going to share my thoughts on that at the moment, but if that bothers you, just be warned if you want the physical version. Anyway, I rented that version from Gamefly, and I got past the major event at Hogsmeade, and that's when I started noticing that the buttons weren't working on my controller, but only some of the buttons. And so I thought, oh, great. Are my Joy-Cons already being busted? I've only had the Switch 2 for a couple of days. Surely it would take a lot longer than that to be busted. So I exited out of the game and I tried moving around on the menus. Worked perfectly fine. I tried playing some other games, including some of the Nintendo Classic games, and they worked perfectly fine. Then I went back into Hogwarts Legacy and I tried using another controller. And that controller had the same problem with the same buttons. So I knew it had to be a problem with the game. I tried resetting it. I tried loading and reloading different save files, and nothing seemed to work, even when I restarted the Switch 2 itself. So at that point I just said, I give up. This game is unplayable. I'm not going to review it. I sent it back to Gamefly and thought, well, that's a shame. Hogwarts Legacy was my number 3 game of 2023. And I would have loved to be able to gush about it again. But then I was browsing the eShop, and I saw that Hogwarts Legacy for the Switch 2 was on sale for only $10. And I thought to myself, okay, if the game is really that broken, but they're only charging $10 for it, I think I might be willing to put up with it. Especially since I had watched IGN's review, and the reviewer had said that he encountered the same problem, and all he did was go into the menu, select exit to main menu, and then once he rebooted the game was able to control perfectly fine again. I tried that, and lo and behold, it did work. It was inconsistent about how long it would work. Sometimes I would be able to go several hours just fine, but then other times it would only take 2 minutes before I had to restart the game again. But at least that review helped me realize the game was still playable. One other minor glitch that kind of annoyed me a bit is that sometimes after I would fast travel, the camera would stop working, but if I switched to mouse mode and moved the camera like that, and then switched back to traditional controls, then the right stick would become usable again. I know a lot of people are not going to want to defend Hogwarts Legacy's price with that many glitches, but they are fixable. They're not game breakers, and the game autosaves so much that even if you do have to restart to be able to use the buttons on your controller again, it shouldn't take you more than like a minute or two. Still, for a game that's priced at $60 if you're getting the game for itself, but if you have the Switch 1 version already and you want to get this version, you only have to pay $10. Now, it is still a separate game. It's not an upgrade, like, for example, what they have with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but you can transfer your save data from the Switch 1 version over to this. To my knowledge, it does not come with the DLC, though, although from what I could tell on the eShop page, most of the DLC was just extra cosmetics and an arena to fight dark wizards in, and that's about it. If you were the type of person that was put off by Hogwarts Legacy in general, like you didn't like the story and you didn't like the characters or the world building or any of those mechanics of the game itself, this version is not going to change your mind. It's still more or less the same game with the same voice acting, the same kind of underwhelming story, and the same frustrating ending structure that made me wonder if I should delay my original review. But if you like Hogwarts Legacy but didn't want to play it on Switch 1, this is a really serviceable way to play it if you have a discount, which in retrospect, the only reason I was able to get it for $10 was because I already had the Switch 1 version, which that I did get on sale. I believe I only paid between $14 to $17. So I imagine this game will probably go on sale relatively often. If they do not fix those bugs about the buttons not working, then I would say wait for it to go on sale, just because I can't recommend spending $60 for a game that's that unoptimized, especially compared to like even some of the worst $60 Nintendo games, besides Pokemon, don't have those kinds of unpolished moments. There were other little annoyances throughout my playthrough too, like a platform being completely invisible, but my character could still stand on it, but when I reloaded the save file it was there again. But thankfully those other glitches were few and far between, and the game was an absolute joy to look at. I loved the combat system. Once I got used to flying the broom, that was a lot of fun. I felt more incentive to explore the world this time around because I think they added a tracker to track down other things besides just side quests. Like you could track down where flue flames are, and you can track down where a person that gives you a side quest is located, making it so much easier for completionists. Again, they still didn't fix the frustrating level cap that you're required to get to beat the game, but I think I got close enough where you'd consider it meeting the criteria. I beat the final boss, I was told I saved the Wizarding World, and just because I was 4 levels below what I should have been, I think that's close enough to completing it. You can yell at me in the comments if you think I'm a fake reviewer, but that's what I did in my first review and no one complained, so I think I'm all good. If you really like Hogwarts Legacy, and you might have it on the Switch 1 but cannot stand those loading screens and that's really taking you out of the experience, this is a much better version apart from those control glitches that I mentioned. But thankfully, the glitches don't take that long to restore because the loading screens are so quick and snappy that you should be able to get back to your game in a minute or two. But they happen frequently enough that I just can't justify this at the full $60. But if you already have the game, and you use the buyer's discount, $10 is an absolute steal. That is less than what Nintendo is charging for some of their upgrade packs. And Hogwarts Legacy is such a gorgeous game with so much going on. Like, yeah, if you can get it for $10, go for it. As far as if you don't have the buyer's discount, what price would I recommend this at? Probably something like $30 or $20 sounds reasonable, because you're getting quite a lot of content and a huge open world that is really gorgeous, has a lot of green, a lot of water, because it's in Scotland, so you're not going to see a whole lot of stuff like deserts and volcanoes, but what you do see is some of the best scenery I've ever seen on a Nintendo system. Except for the character models. Those are still, like, so creepy. Like, the characters hardly ever have any expressions on their faces, and when they do, it's usually in pre-rendered cutscenes. And when they're just casually talking, it feels like someone is just making their hands and their eyebrows move because they don't want it to look too much like Ocarina of Time, but really takes you out of the immersion when a character's supposed to be angry, but it looks like their mouth is just moving like a puppet. So if you can look past that, this is a really fantastic game, and I love it just as much as I did in 2023, apart from the button glitches. But I am very grateful that the loading screens are so much faster, going in and out of Hogsmeade is no longer frustrating, and I felt more compelled to keep returning to Hogsmeade to sell my stuff and buy stuff from the shops, because I didn't have to worry about the game pausing every couple of seconds. So I hope you guys enjoy this game as much as I do, and let's hope that there will eventually be a Hogwarts Legacy 2, but if not, this is a pretty good way to go out. So with that, thank you very much for watching, my friends. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!